Yo, what's good everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, I want to say what's up and welcome to the fam. You could have been anywhere on YouTube right now, watching pranks, music videos, or even conspiracy theories. But you're here, so that already means you're about to get a story worth your time. Now let me ask you this. When you think of Kodak Black, what comes to mind first? Probably that raspy Florida accent, the wild hairstyles, maybe those viral moments that got the internet talking, right? But before all that, before the fame, before the chaos, there was just a little boy with a voice so raw and so honest that he was out here entering singing competitions before most kids could even spell competition. Yeah, Kodak Black. Singing. That's where this story starts. Beat pause. So sit back, relax, and picture this. South Florida, early 2000s. The air is hot, sticky, the kind of heat that makes you feel like the sun's got a personal vendetta. The neighborhoods are alive with the sound of people, kids playing football in the street, cars cruising by blasting Trick Daddy, mums yelling from the porch. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, there's a little boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, standing on a crate because he's too short to reach the mic. He's not rapping. Not yet. He's singing a gospel song, loud, passionate. And that little boy's name, Deuce on Octave, the kid the world would later call Kodak Black. Kodak grew up in Golden Acres, a housing project in Pompano Beach, Florida. And for anyone who knows that area, you already know it's tough. Opportunity doesn't exactly knock on your door out there. You've got to chase it, grab it, and hold it down like your life depends on it. Kodak's mom, Marceline, was from Haiti. She worked long hours, doing whatever she could to keep food on the table. But one thing she made sure of. Her boy had something to believe in. Something bigger than the streets. For Kodak, that something started with music. From as early as people can remember, little Deuceon loved sound. He'd hum along to radio songs, bang rhythms on tabletops, and memorize melodies after hearing them once. He didn't have fancy instruments or a music teacher. He just had that ear. You know, that gift you can't teach. People in the neighborhood started to notice. There was this one story that gets told a lot by old heads in Pompano, about how Kodak used to perform at local church events and talent shows. He'd be in these little local singing competitions, surrounded by kids older than him, standing there in oversized shirts and borrowed sneakers, holding the mic with both hands. And when the music started, it was like time stopped. That shy, quiet kid, gone, replaced by a voice that came from somewhere deep, deep like it carried the pain and the hope of his whole block. You see, Kodak wasn't just singing for fun. For him, it was escape. It was freedom. Imagine being a kid surrounded by struggle, but when that beat kicks in, when that crowd starts clapping, suddenly you're not just some kid from Golden Acres anymore. You're somebody. That's what those early singing competitions did for Kodak. They gave him his first audience, his first taste of what it feels like to move people with your voice. But here's where it gets interesting. Even back then, he wasn't sticking to one sound. Some days he'd sing gospel. Other days he'd switch it up and start spitting bars, freestyling about the stuff he saw around him. He had this natural rhythm, this storytelling ability that made people listen even when he was just a kid. There's this one woman from his neighborhood. She told a story once about how Kodak would walk around school humming melodies, and other kids would follow him, turning it into a mini performance in the hallway. Like, imagine being 8 years old and already commanding a crowd. That's different. Background music shifts, softer piano, more emotional. Now Kodak's mom, she wasn't always thrilled about it. Like any mom trying to protect her son from the streets, she wanted him to stay focused, stay out of trouble. But even she could see that music was something real for him. When other kids wanted toys, Kodak wanted a notebook. When other kids were watching cartoons, Kodak was memorizing lyrics. And that passion, that fire, it only grew stronger as he got older. Those little singing competitions turned into freestyle battles. The church stage turned into the block, and before long, he was writing verses about real life, his life, the hunger, the struggle, the dreams. But pause for a second. Let's go back. Because this story isn't just about music, it's about why that music mattered. Kodak once said that when he was young, he didn't really have many people to look up to. Nobody around him was making it. But those competitions, those moments when people clapped for him, that was validation. That was proof he could do something special. And isn't that what we all want? To be seen, to be heard. Let me ask you, do you remember the first time someone told you you were good at something? That spark you felt, that's what Kodak felt every time he sang. Every cheer, every clap, every "yo, that kid's nice" moment, it built him up piece by piece. Now, a lot of people think Kodak just popped out of nowhere in the rap game. But nah, his roots go deep. Those early competitions were the training ground. They taught him how to perform under pressure, how to keep going, even when people doubted him. Because let's be real, not everyone was cheering. Some people laughed, said, "Man, that little kid can't sing," or "He's too small to be up there." But Kodak, he used that as fuel. Every doubt turned into motivation, and that's a lesson right there. Sometimes the best artists, the ones who make it out, are the ones who start from places that don't believe in them. Music intensifies slightly, trap beat fades in. By the time Kodak hit middle school, he'd already made a name for himself locally. He was that kid who could rap, sing, and make a crowd move. People would challenge him to freestyle battles on the spot. Lunch tables turned into drum kits. Rhymes turned into stories. But here's what made him stand out. While other kids were just rhyming words, Kodak was speaking from experience. He wasn't making up fantasies, he was painting real-life pictures. And it all came from that foundation. Those singing competitions that taught him how to connect with people emotionally. When you listen to Kodak's songs today, whether it's Tunnel Vision, No Flockin', or Tested, Approved, and Street Certified, you can still hear that same emotional rawness he had as a little kid. The melody, the vulnerability, the pain wrapped in rhythm. That's not something you learn later, that's something you grow up with. Let's talk about that voice for a second. Because Kodak doesn't sound like anyone else. He never did. Even when he was a kid singing in those competitions, people would say, "That boy got a sound." Not polished, not clean, but real. It's almost like his voice carried the texture of the streets, gritty but soulful. And that's the magic of it. That's what separates artists from performers. Performers give you a show. Artists make you feel something. So when Kodak later started blowing up in the rap world, it wasn't some random miracle. It was years of performing, learning how to read crowds, and pouring his heart into every note, long before a label ever came calling. Now, if you've been rocking with Kodak for a while, you know he's always mixed melody with rap. That's not new. That's him. He was doing that since day one. Think about it. That blend of singing and rapping you hear in today's artists. Kodak was doing that as a kid without even realizing it. He was bending genres before it was trendy. And maybe that's why so many people connect with him. Because no matter how wild his life got later, his music still feels like it came from that same little boy who stood on a crate, gripping a mic that was too big for his hands. Let's take a moment and reflect. Imagine you're that kid. You've got a voice, a dream, but you're surrounded by poverty, by people who don't believe in your path. What do? Most people would have given up. But Kodak didn't. Those early competitions didn't just give him confidence, they gave him purpose. Every note he sang was like a promise to himself. One day, he'd be heard by the world. And he was right. Because that little boy from the local singing competitions would grow up to have millions singing his lyrics back to him. It's wild when you think about it, right? How something as small as a local church competition could set the foundation for a global rap career. But that's how life works sometimes. Greatness starts small. Kodak didn't have studio equipment. He didn't have vocal coaches. He had heart. And that's what carried him, and maybe that's why, even with all the fame and controversy, you can still feel the human in his music. You can still hear that kid who used to sing for crowds of 20, dreaming about thousands. Now, I gotta ask you, have you ever had a moment where you felt like the world doubted you, but deep down you knew you had something special? Because that's the part of Kodak's story that hits the hardest. Beneath all the fame and fame drama, he's proof that raw talent and persistence can come from anywhere. Even a little boy singing in South Florida heat. So next time you hear a Kodak track, think about that. The kid behind the voice, the journey behind the sound. Music fades down to a warm outro beat. All right, fam, if you made it this far, you're a real one. I want to hear from you. Did you know Kodak Black used to sing in competitions as a kid? And what's your favorite Kodak song that still gives you chills when you hear it? Drop your thoughts down below in the comments. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive we've got coming your way. Because every legend starts somewhere. And sometimes it starts with a kid holding a microphone, singing his heart out. Until next time, stay real, stay curious, and keep chasing your voice. Peace.